As anticipated in the previous sections, a feature peculiar to humanist manuscripts is that they circulated in the proximity of those authors whose works they preserved. Once a work by a humanist was finished and ready for distribution, it usually started disseminating at a pretty fast pace, especially if written by a well-known and admired writer. If a dedication copy existed, the dedicatee's milieu, whether a fellow humanist, an aristocrat, a prince, a cardinal, or the Pope himself, would be the first to receive and transcribe the new text. Almost simultaneously came the author's friends and colleagues. Many of them would live either in the same place as the author or in those cities and courts where humanists served as secretaries, chancellors, and courtiers. Other important venues for the copying of humanist writings were such official gatherings as church councils. Just to name a couple, those in Constance and Ferrara/Florence, 1414, 1488, and 1438, 1439 respectively, proved crucial to the dissemination of numerous humanist writings. In the case of religious and philosophical works, monasteries and convents played an important role in the diffusion of many humanist texts. Last but not least, booksellers like Vespasiano da Bisticci produced a high number of copies for a host of customers, ranging from the very humanists who frequented their shops to the highest dignitaries, both lay and clergymen of the time. In a scenario like this, with humanists meeting colleagues on a daily basis, discussing scholarly topics with them in gatherings like those described in many of their works, just think of a typical humanist genre like the so-called Ciceronian dialogue, and exchanging manuscripts, as attested by hundreds of their letters, it is not surprising that they would sometimes come across copies of their own works. When that happened, human nature, and above all any writer's nature, demanded that they read that copy or, at least flip through it, to see if any mistake could be found. This kind of behavior is just normal. The same happens to most authors today when they receive, hot off the press, the first copies of their brand new book. Almost inevitably, with trembling hands they turn some pages, usually the first 2 or 3, then halfway through the book and finally the last ones, to see if any typo is left, despite the several sets of proofs that they have checked. If one cannot help this feeling today, in the age of publishing computer programs, imagine how worried about the correctness of their text authors must have been before the invention of the printing press, knowing full well that even the best scribes make mistakes. Humanists knew this from personal experience, since all of them were scribes too, although not always professionals, in addition to being authors. Besides, they also knew that not even the best scribes could be trusted. For various reasons, even copies preserving a humanist's own works, written by his favorite professional scribe and originally housed in his own library, may display a remarkably high number of mistakes. All of this helps to explain the widespread phenomenon that Italian philologists, who have studied it the most, call moving archetype, archetipo in movimento, or variable archetype. Other formulas referring to the same set of problems are criticism of variants and author philology. They all have to do with an author intervening on his own text after it has started circulating, as attested by one or more surviving copies. If we are lucky, those changes are in the author's own hand. When this happens, these variants are usually in the form of marginal notes. If minimal, they are sometimes added between the lines, so-called interlinear interventions, crossing out the previous reading. In most cases, however, the editor finds what could be authorial variants preserved in copies that have received them, inherited, we may say, from a lost antigraph. When this happens, the philologist must determine whether those readings should be attributed to the author or to a scribe instead. This is not an easy task. Several criteria, starting with style, must be taken into account to explain the origins of such readings. This is not surprising, though. A philologist's personal judgment always plays a crucial role in the so-called common error method that we have been talking about so far, where one needs to distinguish between simple variants, polygenetic errors, that is, mistakes that could occur independently in different manuscripts, and significant errors. That is why, in my opinion, even the most refined systems of computer-assisted philology will never eliminate the philologist's discriminating and critical role. But this is not the right time to enter this kind of discussion, no matter how interesting it may be. Let's go back to our topic, that is, authorial variants.